FSF PopCast live show. Computer snafu and all, I still made it in on time, just by barely the skin of my chinny chin chin. And no, we are not late.
We are
Woo-hoo!
not. Look at us go, being all responsible.
Look at us go.
On time.
Okay, we'll go with on time. Let's never say responsible. That's never a safe sentence for us.
I mean, I've been known to be responsible for things, but
we're responsible for other people, but not for myself. Well, anyway, welcome to the FSF PopCast. This is our sidebar, and tonight, John and I are continuing our discussion of the Disney era Star Wars. We have, in the past couple weeks, covered the live-action movies. We have covered live-action television, and tonight we're going to cover Disney Star Wars animation.
Some of the best of Disney Star Wars, honestly.
I will honestly say that I think that, this is probably not some of the best. It is probably the best of all of Star Wars, short of the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It depends on your perspective, but yeah. Okay, sure.
Now, with that being said, that also means that we're also talking about things like Rogue One and Episode 3, which I would, put slightly ahead of the animation.
Okay.
Hello, Kathleen. My friends. I miss you. Well, you don't miss John. I mean, John's right there with you, but
she does. Every once in a while, there's a snowball that whiffs past my head, but that's
a different type of miss.
Yeah.
But hey, so before we get into the rest of that whole conversation about Disney Star Wars that we were just getting ready to talk about, let's talk about our show partners. We just want to say thank you real quick to our show partners, Bones Coffee Company, where you can save 10% off your entire order by entering the code FSF PopCast. And they have amazing coffee, by the way. You're going to want to check that out. And then, of course, Idea Farm, which was formerly TCTs. It's where fandom meets fashion. And they got a lot of really cool stuff based on all the different types of, you name a fandom, they've got something for it. And if you use the code FSF15, you get 15% off of your order there. And then, of course, Eddie AI. It's not a generative AI. We don't use generative AI, but Eddie AI is something that helps you tell your story. It helps you it helps us with our shorts, with our reels, TikToks, all that kind of stuff that we have already created. It's basically just an editing program. But if you are looking for something along those lines, strongly suggest that you look into Eddie AI. They have a really cool subscription plan now and very easy, intuitive software to use. Can't stress that enough, especially when you have the brain of this one. It's helpful. And then last but not least, Level Up Sabers, because who doesn't want a lightsaber that's better than a stick? Because literally, that's what they are. So Kathleen says that she has the aim of a stormtrooper. Except with actual pew-pews, she's pretty good with.
She actually is. Her dad was actually an instructor for Marine sharpshooting back in the late 60s, early 70s.
Ha, you're screwed.
I could hit everything he could, but anyway.
Okay.
I'm not going to talk about who taught me how to shoot, but anyway.
Yeah. Pretty sure it was one of them Nazi guys. Anyway.
Backwoods Michigan people, okay? It gets interesting.
It does get interesting. I live by some of them. It does get interesting.
Yeah.
Boy, howdy. So anyway, if you're just tuning in, we're not talking about all the guns that we can shoot and all the things. We are actually here tonight to talk about Star Wars animation. We're pretty excited about that. Kathleen says, then there's my mom and her NRA association. There is that. So, so we have these in tonight, and I have them as best I could into chronological order. There's a little bit of jumping around with some of the shows and how they were released and what. So, but we're just going to start right off.
Disney, right? We're not talking Ewoks, droids, or the 2D Clone Wars, right?
Correct.
Because those are all awesome in their own way.
They are. But no, we will not be talking about those. And technically, the first part of the first show also cannot be classified as Disney era Star Wars.
Technically.
Technically, it can't. It's done by Cartoon Network. But
Technically correct is the best form of correct.
exactly, because then you get to say technically.
Yes.
Technically. So technically, I'm going to put this up on the screen. That's probably not technically the best place to use it, but I'm technically
You're using technology.
boom. Shakalaka. Anyway, here we go. So this is the first one, Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Now, the first few seasons of this were shown on Cartoon Network, and that was before Disney was involved. But it is a Lucasfilm project, and so we're going to include it because the last couple seasons, particularly 6 and the heartbreaker of season 7, are definitely Disney era Star Wars. And if you're questioning how good animation can be, and you haven't watched season 7, we need you to leave. Go watch season 7. And when you're done crying, you're more than welcome to come back and be part of this conversation again.
Especially the last 4 episodes of season 7 are some of the best,
baby Jesus,
best storytelling in Star Wars, in
for
animation,
sure.
and I'm going to say in television in general.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, by the way, there's going to be no spoiler warnings tonight. This is all stuff that's been aired. It's been out there for a while. If you haven't seen it by now and you're worried about spoilers, you are too late to that party. But there's a couple scenes, particularly in season 7, that get me every single time. It doesn't matter how, and I've watched this so many times, but it doesn't matter how often I watch it or when I watch it or what kind of mood I'm in when I start watching it. When I hit these 2 particular scenes, I'm going to choke up. I'm probably going to cry. When Ahsoka comes back and she sees all the troopers with their helmets painted.
Yep.
Instant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then secondly, when she is burying the troopers in the snow.
Oof.
And you see those helmets.
Yeah.
Oh, both of those scenes. It's the the welcome back commander to the I'm now burying the people that were my friends. And those 2 scenes, man, just ooh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus,
and for me, it's also like, oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, go.
Yeah. When Maul is just explaining the whole plot to her, and I mean, the worst thing any villain ever does is just tell the complete truth, and that's all he does. But that truth is so hard to accept because of what it means for everything else in Ahsoka's life.
Yeah,
it's just that moment is just pure storytelling perfection.
One of the things I loved about that with Maul when we had Whitwer on, he talks about that with us, that it was the fact that Maul was like, you want to know who the bad guy is? I'll tell you who the bad guy is. Here's who it is. Yeah. I mean, he was trying to tell them, and the Jedi wouldn't listen. It's just, that whole season 7 is just amazing. Yeah. I mean, there's I shouldn't say the whole season. There's like 3 or 4 episodes where I'm like, yeah, we can skip over those. The Martez sisters ones are filler at best.
They are and they aren't, because their life was changed by events that happened earlier in the series.
Right, and I get that.
And this is Ahsoka learning that just because she's off being the hero doesn't mean that everybody's going to see her that way.
Right. It doesn't mean that other people aren't affected by the things that she did or was adjacent to by being a Jedi. Yeah. No, I get that portion of it. It's one of those things, like I've talked about in other series with Disney, where I really feel that could have been truncated down into 1, maybe 2 episodes. Yeah. It was 4 episodes, and I think 2 episodes would have knocked it out, and they could have used those other 2 episodes to tell some other portion of the story. I don't know what portion of the story, because season 7 for the most part is a masterclass in storytelling. But yeah, I would have been okay with that.
I'm looking something up real quick.
Okay,
Sorry.
you look that up.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we have 7 seasons of the Clone Wars. If you haven't watched, like I said, this is out of all the ones that we're going to talk about tonight. This is probably the shining gem, the jewel of all the Star Wars animation. There is another one that we're going to talk about here in a couple minutes that is definitely a very close second place. No, all good.
Ugh.
So, but yeah, but Clone Wars. One of the things I love best about this series, and a lot of what Star Wars animation does, is that it fills the gaps so nicely in between the stories that are being told in the movies and the live action. Yeah. So the things that we see in episodes 1, 2, and 3 are bolstered and filled by what we see in the Clone Wars. And then what we're seeing past that point, we see in other Star Wars animation series. And it really helps explain what was happening, why it was happening, and what was happening with the people around them.
Right. And season 7, sorry, I clicked on something and an ad loaded and it got loud over here. I don't know if you could hear that or not. Okay.
No, actually, I didn't. I think I was talking louder than it was.
Okay. Anyway, what season 7 of Clone Wars, being a purely Disney production, got right was it had more than 8 episodes and it had a consistent runtime. I had to look it up and they're all 23 minutes, 22, 23 minutes. So, I mean, yeah.
I would love more than 8 episodes and consistent runtimes. That is the dream.
That's been our complaint about everything since then.
True. Literally every episode or every series that we talked about for the live action television series was that we liked what they were doing, just wished it was consistent runtimes.
Right. Now, maybe I'm especially fond of it because it came out in early 2020 and I really had nothing else going on for a little while there. I don't think anybody
really
else.
You didn't have anything. No, I am shocked at this revelation that you didn't have anywhere to go.
Season 7, episode 4 dropped May 13th, which was kind of the day everything changed for, I think, most people in 2020.
Pretty close, yeah.
Yeah. So we escaped potential trauma into Star Wars.
Which gave us a different type of trauma, but that's...
we
escaped reality trauma for pseudo reality trauma. In a 3D setting. So that's awesome. Yeah. Good times.
Yeah, I just put that together looking at this. I'm like, oh, that's why. That's why. Okay.
Yeah, that might explain why it hit so hard. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. So like I said, in my opinion, this is the shining gem of all Star Wars animation.
Yep. Pretty much. So it's a really high bar.
It does. Now, I mean, I said we weren't really going to talk about it, but if you want to go back and you want to have some fun, go back and watch the 2D series. It's a completely different tone and texture. And, there are some carryover for voice actors from one to the other, but it's amazing how much different General Grievous is from the 2D series to this, because he's way more menacing in the 2D series. So, in this, like live action series, he's a little kind of just, he's the, the guy with emphysema. So,
right.
So, yeah.
Which, the 2D series explains why that is kind of cool. But
yeah. So, I mean, they both have their place and they're both enjoyable. But, if I have my druthers, I'm probably going to sit down and watch this version of Clone Wars over the 2D. But the 2D is still fun to watch. So,
right.
All right. Moving on. Next up, Star Wars Rebels. This came out directly after the Clone Wars series.
Yeah.
And gave us 4 seasons. Technically almost 3.5. It really wasn't. I mean, it was a 4th season, but it wasn't a very long one. But really good. And it's a different animation style. One of the biggest complaints that people have about this version of Star Wars was that originally it was made for the youngins because Star Wars has never been made for kids, and that they didn't like the lightsabers because the lightsabers were too skinny. They didn't like how Darth Vader was drawn. It was a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of really nitpicky stuff. I'm like, if you're getting hung up on the shape of the sabers, we have bigger issues.
Yeah. Although that does lead to a nice joke from can't think of the droid's name in Ahsoka. Huyang?
Huyang, yeah.
Yeah. That Kanan's saber always had too narrow of an emitter.
True.
And it wasn't gonna work. Yeah.
So, but I do feel like this story has one of the coolest Jedis in it, even if it's a begrudging Jedi, and that's Kanan Jarrus.
Yes.
I love his character. I love his story arc. It sucks that he died, but when we talk about Star Wars and Jedi, that's not an uncommon trope for a Jedi that you like to go bye-bye. Right. And yeah, we were surprised too, Kathleen, that Star Wars was made for children. But yeah. Now, one of the things that's not uncommon for this series, like the Clone Wars series, and like some of the other Star Wars series, is that you have to get past season 1. Clone Wars season 1 is a drudgery.
You can skip most of season 1.
Yeah,
there's some episodes, but for the most part,
yeah, there's some very good episodes in season 1, but a lot of it is just like, oh boy, okay. And a lot of the early episodes in season 1 of Rebels, other than the first couple where they're setting the plate, introducing the characters and the location of Lothal and what was going on there, are also kind of skippable. But once you get into season 2, season 3, and then again, we talk about the heartbreak and trauma of Star Wars. Season 4 of Star Wars Rebels is one of the, like season 7 of Clone Wars, is horribly traumatic. And again, there's that whole thing where Kanan looks back at Hera and his eyes open up again. Every time. Yeah. Every time it gets me.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's a moment, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, this show in particular, I think, emphasizes the found family concept better than any other.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, because it is literally, Ezra is an orphan.
Yeah.
And he finds his family. He finds a father figure. He finds a mother figure. He finds, the weird uncle in Zeb. And, I want to say Chopper's his destructive brother type thing. It's just, he's got a whole family here that he's never had before.
His murder bot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. I think everybody in this episode that you see on screen there, short of Vader, because he's not trying to find any family. He was trying to kill family at this point in his life. But, what we're seeing here on screen is that everybody there has, Zeb being Lasat and all the Lasats being gone, he had found family. Hera feeling distance and even disenfranchised from her own people had found family. I mean, you could go through that entire list of everybody on that screen and say that's somebody who's found family.
Yeah.
Let's see. Star Wars made for children. No two bullies in the 70s who told me to grow up. And it's made for kids of all ages and sizes. But primarily, yes, it was Star Wars was originally and still made for children.
Yeah. It really is.
Crazy uncle who still lives with his parents. Okay, you're not wrong.
But I even like the not so subtle tie-ins to the original trilogy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like the second episode after the premiere, I think it was. 3PO and R2 are there, and apparently R2 and Chopper don't like each other.
Yeah. Well, Chopper didn't like any other droid, which was fantastic.
Chopper didn't like anybody, I don't think. But then I think it's season 2 when Leia shows up and Ezra tries to act all teenage boy.
Yeah.
You remember being a teenage boy. I remember being a teenage boy. Yeah, it's just, you can relate to the character.
Oh, for sure.
See, so that's how stupid I looked when I was 16. Okay.
That's how stupid I looked 20 minutes ago when I was flirting with my wife. Yeah, understood. Granzier says, no to those same bullies who are now Star Wars fans. Hey, we're in our 60s. Grow up.
So I absolutely love like the guys who picked on me for liking Marvel and comic books and Star Wars and stuff. And now I see him on Facebook with yeah, I took my kid to see this movie. It was great. I'm like, dude, I told you that 40 years ago.
Right?
It's like,
your wife would like to tell you that you're still a teenage boy.
Only in the best ways. And I'm going to stop there.
Okay. Anyway, so no, but we've got a really good show here. So this is one of those animated series that if you haven't thank you, John. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not you know what though? It's nice to see people coming around, and whenever they get into the fandom, I'm glad they're here. Yeah. So but yeah. Still, thank you for pointing that out. But yeah, so we've got a really good show here. This is the second in a row of very good shows that came out. Now, Clone Wars was set for I think that was like TV 12. Yeah, this is technically TVY 7, so it's made for a younger audience originally, but I believe as the seasons went on, that grading scale changed and it went to an older audience in the seasons 3 and 4.
It got a little more serious, yeah.
It definitely got a little bit more serious, and there were bigger stakes, and so the young people were watching our heroes getting to more and more danger, and there was more reason for fear for our heroes. So yeah, and then of course with the death of Kanan, they were definitely being exposed to the rest of the trauma that the rest of us got. So you're welcome, kids. So, but yeah, this to me is a very close second to all the fun that we had with the Clone Wars.
Yep.
So, all right. Any other thoughts on Rebels before we move on?
It was great. It's a great way to get, those not quite little kids into the story, or, 40-year-old men who think Star Wars animation is just for kids.
I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, no, so if you guys haven't caught on by now, there's a long running joke here on the show because years ago, it was actually when I first had met John and Kathleen, I refused, and I do mean refused, to watch any Star Wars animation because that was for kids, and why would an adult ever watch that? Because I'd only seen like the first episode or two of Clone Wars, and I was like, and I'm done.
And that's justified. Based on those episodes, I get it.
Yeah. But I had found my hill, I was fighting on it, and I was willing to die on that hill. And then I caved in because there was this thing called the pandemic. And I needed something to watch so I wouldn't go crazy. And I started watching that, and next thing I knew, I couldn't stop watching it.
So, unfortunately, by then you had so much to watch.
Right. So I was playing catch up, and it made me happy. Now it makes me happy every time I turn on.
But again, the entry to the fandom is a welcome entry, so we're glad to have you along.
Exactly. Granzer asks, are these considered canon or no? And if not, were they incorporated as canon later? They are, in fact, canon.
Yep.
So everything you see in the animated series, I think every one of them that we're going to talk about tonight, except for one, possibly two, is considered canon. So, but we'll identify those as we come to them, Granzer, so you'll know which ones we're talking about. But so far, Clone Wars and Rebels are definitely canon. Which brings us to our next one, which is also canon. We will never let you live it down to. I know. I was actually surprised that I got to say something about it tonight before you, if we're being honest. I was like, Kathleen hasn't put anything in the comments about this yet. I'm jumping on it now while I still can. All right. So this next show is also canon. This is also slated for a younger audience, but this is one that stayed for a younger audience, and I believe was only around for 2 seasons, and that's Star Wars Resistance.
Yep, 2 seasons and a bunch of shorts on Disney Plus. Gonna be honest, I haven't actually watched this one. Part of the reason for that is I just really was not into the sequel trilogy at that time. Sure. The other thing is my daughter was 3 weeks old when the show started, so I had a lot of other stuff going on.
I can't imagine why you wouldn't watch it.
I was just trying to sleep when I could.
Very fair. Her thumbs were busy. Harold needed dinner. Harold is their snake with legs.
It's a leopard gecko.
Again, snake with legs. Anyway.
So on that note,
yes.
Kathleen has actually started her own little mealworm farm. So she has this bin of worms that eat decaying vegetable matter. And she has to interrupt the reproductive cycle to make sure they don't eat each other too much. And yeah, it's actually really gross, but really cool. And it smells terrible.
Ew. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, Star Wars Resistance. It was only on for about 2 seasons. Now, if you watch this, and I haven't watched all of it. I've watched quite a bit of it. It is slated for a much younger audience, and it's a lot of fun if you watch it with a younger person. Like right now, honestly, Anna would be the perfect age to sit down and watch this. I think it's one of those things where the character it's drawn and you could tell that it's made for a younger audience, particularly in the way that the scenes are set up, the coloring of the screen, what's happening, even the way you look at the logo on the screen there, how brightly layered out it is. Mm-hmm. It's definitely written for a younger audience, and that's fine because we're exposing our younger audiences to Star Wars themes and tropes and characters from the sequel trilogy. So it actually is kind of nice. Poe Dameron's in a few episodes. You see really? BB-8 and a few other things. Yeah, so it's got some nice tie-ins, and for a younger audience, it's a perfect introduction to Star Wars. Now we're going to talk about one for also for younger audiences, but from I would say probably about 6 to 8, this is a really nice show for our younger Star Wars viewers.
Okay.
Let's see. Tim, were you the opinionation that all animation was solely for kids? I felt that way in the 70s until maybe seen Watership Down in the late 70s, and that changed it all. Actually, no. I mean, I love animation. I was a big fan of like Marvel comics, Spider-Man as a kid. I grew up, and I was still watching that. And I've always loved animated series. But I just, for whatever reason, just for the couple episodes that I had seen of Star Wars Clone Wars, I was of the opinion that series was for kids, for really little kids, and that's why I wasn't going to watch it at that time. So, but not all animation, because I loved animated movies. I had, Toy Story and all that type of stuff. No problem with any of that, and I was a big fan of those. Heavy Metal, yeah, all that kind of cool stuff. So, but not all animation, just that particular one at that point. But yeah, so speaking of one that's for kids, this is a great way to introduce kids to Star Wars, especially if you're worried about maybe some of the more mature storylines that were happening in their sequel trilogy. You're worried about how to introduce some of these things. Really nice here. And there's acceptable levels of danger for our heroes, our friends in this show, and not to where you feel like you have to worry about having to explain loss and limb and all those type of things to a youngin. So,
yep. All right, I'll give it a shot. I'll see if Honor wants to watch it with me later.
I think she would enjoy it, honestly. It's got enough silly characters in it and funny moments, and it's kind of a bit anime in some spots. And I say that, just with the way the movements and how things get excited, the way they react, it's a little anime-ish in some of those respects, but it's not anime. So that's best I can tell you.
All right. So, cool. I'll give it a shot.
But okay. That is Star Wars Resistance. Up next. This is in my opinion, I know it's a separate series, but I see this as a continuation of Clone Wars, personally, because they were introduced in Clone Wars, and it's the same animation style, and but it also is one of those nice things that also helps explain. The Bad Batch also helps explain Kanan Jarrus for Rebels and how he came to be, and all these things, and we see Order 66 from another set of eyes, and and how that all worked out.
And you see them adapting to life after Order 66.
Yeah.
And what that was like for clones, for citizens, for civilians. It's pretty heavy.
that's honestly one of my favorite things about this series is because one of the things that doesn't get touched on rather a whole lot in Star Wars I think it might be addressed more in the books, but in visual media is the transition from clone troopers to stormtroopers, and
Right.
how, and that is a bigger difference than what you think it is because of the training and everything else that the clone troopers went through to conscripted soldiers and everything that happened there. And the way that the clone troopers were looked down on and treated and everything else. There's just an awful lot going on in this series that helps you appreciate that transition and that time period from another set of eyes. And I'm, and we say this in every interview when we have somebody on and we talk about their background, how they got started and where they're going. To me, this is a big deal because I love knowing what makes people tick. I love knowing why people do what they do and why they do what they do. And the reasons why they choose to be who they are and so forth. Or maybe they didn't have a choice to be who they are. That's what life handed them. And from a sociological viewpoint, the Bad Batch does a very good job of showing not only the differences in the group with the different clone troopers, but also how they're viewed by society, how they were viewed in the army where they were once prevalent and kind of, they were top dogs as far as, as troopers were concerned, and now how they're treated by these conscripted soldiers who are filing up the ranks faster because there was a cap put on the clone troopers and they couldn't go any higher.
Yeah. And then they were phased out and just used for testing because as with everything else in Disney Star Wars, it has to tie into the Emperor's goal of staying alive forever.
Yeah.
Cloning is part of that, which, I mean, that makes the prequels part of that as well, perfecting the cloning technology.
Right.
Which I actually kind of like on some level. That there was this master plan, we just didn't see it yet.
Right. Yeah. And I do love the fact that they do tie that, they bring that line, that thread, if you will, all the way through.
What you did there is the power of many. Anyway.
It is the power of many. Power of many shows, power of many episodes.
Oh, look at you go.
Look at me go. Look at me do the, look at me talk about the things.
You're doing the things with the words and the smarts and the stuff.
In the words. We use the words, Mom. Anyway, but yeah.
Not those words.
It's not those words. No, not the words that got us in trouble. But yeah.
I learned them from you, Mom.
Learned from watching you. Well, we are drifting off. Anyway, but yeah, this show does a really good job of hitting all those notes, and the differences, like I said, the differences between the troopers can't be stressed enough because the way that it plays out as the series goes and how these troopers all interact with one another. So really cool thing. And I strongly recommend this series as a great follow-up to Rebels and Clone Wars. So
yeah. And the end of the show. Can we talk about that for just a second?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Omega, the female clone that's been raised by these troopers,
not pictured here, by the way.
No, not pictured here. Yeah.
Because I forgot to add her because I am so smart.
It's okay. You just used a stock image. Going off to join the rebellion. And I hope that in April at Star Wars Celebration, they announce, a Star Wars Omega show where
it would only make sense.
Basically the equivalent of Rebels or Clone Wars set during the original trilogy, centered on her. But so interacting with these other characters and fleshing out that time period a little bit more for us.
Yep.
What you got?
Go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah. Legends did a great job of that, but it was also a little janky and uneven in a lot of spots.
Right.
Not that Disney is perfect in any way, but at least they have like a creative team, not just random authors showing up. So I'm hoping that they can do something like that, and maybe people will like it and not complain. But they're also Star Wars fans, so that's what we've been doing since 1980.
This is also very true. Uh,
I'm not that optimistic.
Kathleen says you're janky and uneven.
I have rebuttal, but it's not appropriate for the show.
There you go. You can text it to her. It'll be fine. Yeah, so I'm hoping along the same lines because, you know, I went through the entirety of that final season 3 of The Bad Batch going, oh God, this is where they all die. Oh God, this is where they all die. Oh God, this is where they all die. No, I hated it. But it's also Filoni's way of keeping you on the hot seat and keeping you coming back and exploring emotional trauma. Can I smack your rebuttal?
No.
You two kids need a room. Anyway.
I'm in the room.
Josh. But yeah, it's a long season. Season 4 is a long season. It's a good season, and it's long only from the aspect of there's the expectation every episode that you're going to see one of your favorite clones die, one of your favorite members of the Bad Batch die, or all of them, and then to be able to get to the end and watch Hunter and Ahsoka have their interaction as she's getting ready to take off towards the rebellion. So I'm like you. I'm hoping that we have an Ahsoka show. And I'm hoping Omega show rather.
Thank you.
And that I'm actually hoping that we see Ahsoka in the Omega show, and that they're kind of like, you know, a 2-woman squad of Charlie's Angels going off doing super cool things. You know, behind the scenes.
I want to see Ahsoka meet Luke. I want to see Rex meet Luke.
Yeah,
at some point. I mean, I think that'd just be those of us who have watched all of Clone Wars and everything else, that's going to be just a moment, a thing.
Yeah. So there's lots of stories that need to be told left in animation. And I think because animation does just such an amazing job at these, I'm hoping that that's where it stays because, again, consistent run times and extra episodes. So,
yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Not saying, but just saying.
Disney, that's all we want.
That's all we want. We just want consistency.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Next, Tales of the Jedi. Now these were shorts that came out, and these focused on Ahsoka and
Dooku.
Oh God, yeah, Count Dooku. Thank you. I'm like looking at him, going, I know who that is. Is. And this season was really very good, especially more so on the Ahsoka side. It was the Dooku side was cool to me too, because you could see how he lost his way with the Jedi and why he became disenfranchised with the Jedi. But with the Ahsoka side, we got to see the things that saved her life later. The training that Anakin put her through, the regimented and disciplined training that he put her through, saved her life later. When Order 66 actually happened. Yeah. Inadvertently, he saved her life.
Right. See, I actually prefer the Dooku side of it because I like understanding the villains a little bit more. Okay. Not necessarily that I'm going to sympathize with them, but at least understanding, okay, why did you leave the Order? Why are you evil? What, and what happened to Yaddle? We didn't know until this.
Right.
So I like having those answers, that filling out of the story there.
Yaddle got yeeted.
Yeah. Yep. It's a night.
Yep. It's the night. It's welcome to Dad Joke 101. So, no, that, and I agree with you that it was cool to see that, how he went from being kind of a stickler about the Jedi rules, laws, and orders to being disenfranchised and going as far away from it as possible. Yeedle yaddle.
Hang on.
Yes. John's looking something up.
I am, because my Google food. Yeah. All right. And also Dooku's beef with Mace Windu.
Yeah, it gets explained.
That being like a fracturing point to me.
Yeah.
That was kind of cool, because then you see the political element of the Jedi that helped lead to their downfall.
Kathleen wants to know if Yeedle Yaddle is Jibber Jabber's cousin.
she's gonna jibber jabber about jibber jabber. I tell you what. Anyway,
she's gonna jibber jabber about the Yeedle Yaddle. I'll tell you what. Let's see, for Tales of the Jedi and the voice of Count Dooku, were they able to get the voice of the late great Christopher Lee?
No,
that was a sound alike.
Yeah, it was Corey Burton.
Corey Burton voices so many things in Star Wars, it's insane. He does such a good. Well, he voiced Count Dooku through the entirety of Clone Wars anyway, so it's actually no surprise that they brought Corey Burton in for that.
More importantly, he was Mole in the Disney Atlantis animated movies.
He's been a lot of things. Corey Burton has an amazing voiceover career.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we could get him on the show. I would love to talk with Corey Burton. That would be
throwing that out into the universe, Tim?
I am. I'm definitely throwing that out in the universe. I've tried a couple times. He doesn't do very many interviews, and he's an extremely private man, and I respect the hell out of that. But I also hope that just one day he sees me on some show like this going, but Corey, we would love to talk with you, and I promise to respect your privacy. See, and I hope he sees that and he goes, you know what? Those look like fine, upstanding people. I will be on their show, and we will talk about all things nerdy and geeky. It's a hope. Anyway, but there's only 6 episodes of Tales of the Jedi, and they're not very long. I think the longest episode was 13 minutes. But they are considered shorts, so that is acceptable. But yeah, there's 3 for Ahsoka. We see how she is taken from her people, her family, and what else happened with her. And then there's 3 for Dooku. So, but that is Tales of the Jedi. Any other thoughts?
No, it was a fun series. I liked all sides of it. I just, it was fun.
All right. Next, we have Tales of the Empire. This is the second series of shorts that were released. And again, we have a 3-in-3 story. And I think the longest episode on this was about 15 minutes. But somewhere 13 to 15 minutes for both of those seasons were about the longest. And we have Barriss Offee and good golly almighty, I forgot the other person's name already.
Morgan Elsbeth.
Thank you, Morgan Elsbeth. This is why I keep John around, ladies and gentlemen. Not only is he fun to talk to, but he remembers all the things that I can't and understands that my brain is broken. So,
character first showed up in Mando season 2, the episode where Ahsoka also appeared.
Yes, all affectionately known as the Jedi.
Yeah.
So, see, I remember that, but I couldn't remember her name. So anyway,
what's your daughter's birthday? What's your shoe size?
Actually, I know all of those things.
Okay.
There's reasons why I know those things, and I don't want to share them online. I'll tell you later, though.
Okie
dokie. So, but Tales of the Empire, I didn't. Plus, John has a cool beard. See, there you go.
Thank you.
Exactly. There's more than one reason why I keep John around, but yeah, cool beard is definitely one of them. But yeah, so Tales of the Empire, I didn't care for the Morgan Elsbeth side of the story. And that has nothing to do with the voice actors or anything along those lines. They did their job wonderfully. I didn't think or feel that we needed much more to the Morgan Elsbeth story or need to know more about the Morgan Elsbeth story. So I really wasn't all that broke up about it. But I was very much intrigued by the Barriss Offee, and I wish all 6 episodes would have had to do with her because there's still so much that needs to be told about Barriss Offee that those 3 shorts really, really just don't do it enough justice to me.
Yeah. I mean, the Morgan Elsbeth episodes do help explain the connection between her and Thrawn, which you kind of need for because if you haven't seen those episodes, that connection doesn't make sense in the Ahsoka series. But having this, it's like,
I'll give you that.
That's there.
I will give you that
issue. But yeah, the Barriss Offee episodes, especially having Marok show up in the background, who also then shows up in Ahsoka, that was cool.
But it still doesn't explain who or what Marok is, and so that question is still out there.
He's just an inquisitor.
Okay, I want more. Okay, all right. God,
I'm like obsessed with this character, and I love it.
I am. I totally am. I will admit it, and I get pissed off every time we talk about it. Anyway. I'm like 3 seconds away from going on a rant. We'll change here because Granzer says And that shirt that John is wearing is quite cool too. I don't know what it's all about, but it's cool.
Okay,
so I'll let you explain. It.
Pictus is a drum and bagpipe band that Kathleen and I met at the Michigan Renaissance Festival. It's two drummers, their husband and wife, and then their good friend who plays bagpipes. And it's not exactly easy listening music. It's more like drunken brawl music for the most part. And ever since my daughter was wee little still in her mother's belly, this music has put her to sleep. It is some of our favorite stuff in the world because it's awesome music, but also because it knocks Honor out.
And
Angus
has been part of the show. So he's come on. We've done an interview with him, and he was on our other show called Pop Culture Addicts, but we've also replayed that here on FSF PopCast, and you can watch that on our live shows channel as one of the replays. So yeah, you'll see Angus on there.
Yeah, they actually have a new album out right now, but you can only buy it from them as physical media at their shows right now. They haven't put it on streaming yet. I don't blame them. Streaming pays crap.
There you go. Kathleen says it still works 6.5 years later.
It does. It's beautiful.
Hey, you know what? Once you find one of those things, you stick with it. Yep. So, all right. But yeah, so the shorts are what they are. There's not a lot of story packed into them, but they do highlight some very necessary items for, especially with the Barra-Sophie story. And also, yeah, the what's her name story, Morgan Elsbeth. There it is. Good old what's her name. But it highlights her connection to Thrawn and helps cement what's going on in the Ahsoka show. But the Barra-Sophie story, really kind of cool. How kind of helps explain what happened to Barriss after she turned on the Jedi and Ahsoka. So kind of cool.
Kind of.
All right, moving on just because of time. Next, this is one of the shows that is not canon. So far, everything that we've talked about for Star Wars animation has been canon. These shows, Star Wars Visions, are stories that are just kind of out there in the ether. They're kind of like what the extended universe, the expanded universe was back in the day. People had a cool idea. They made a story about it, and a bunch of different anime companies got together and with their style of anime and made Visions. There's been 2 seasons of it so far. They have been wildly popular. I'm not a big anime fan, so I don't have a whole lot of good things to say about it. And it's not because the stories are bad. It's just if you don't like anime, you're going to have a hard time with these stories. Now, with that being said, episode 1 of season 1 is one of the coolest things I've ever watched. It's all in black and white, except for the red sabers and a few other things happening. It's visually very, very cool. And I absolutely love that episode. It's stunning. But past that, there's not a whole lot that really worked for me, just because I'm not a big anime fan and I didn't really tie into the way that they're trying to tell the stories or the animation style itself.
Yeah, I mean, I watched it passively. I wasn't really engrossed in the story.
Okay.
I thought it all looked cool. I mean, it's all different animation styles. It's not a consistent one look, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's cool. I just didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. I watched the first season. I don't even know if I watched the second season.
I started to, but I didn't get through it.
Yeah.
And again, because it's anime, and I'm not downing anime. Anime is a very wildly popular storytelling device and animation style. And if you love it, again, we don't gatekeep. So you know what? If you love it, that's great, and I'm glad you love it. It's just not my thing.
Yeah.
I have nothing against it. It's just never appealed to me.
Yeah. What's interesting is that the anime style was actually based on like old Disney animation and just like adapted a little bit. So really that Disney is making anime that's based on Disney is kind of cool. There's like an Inception level there.
A little bit.
Yeah, the storytelling is very anime style.
Extremely. Yeah.
doesn't really jive with everybody, especially in the United States.
So yeah,
but we're not going to yuck somebody else's yum.
Absolutely not. Grander says, I have to look this up to see the art, but just curious. The art is like the very short Star Wars TIE fighter that has been online for nearly a decade. So now some of it, yes, the animation. So the thing is, there's like 4 or 5 different animations companies that are involved in Star Wars Visions, and they all have their own way of drawing anime in different styles. Some have the wildly accentuated bodies with the big eyes and all that stuff. Some of it is just very truncated styles of drawing and all that type of stuff. So it's one of those things where each company was allowed carte blanche to do their style of anime. But there are some that do look like the one that I think you're referring to there, Granter, and that one was very cool. And I would definitely, honestly, I'd watch more of that if we're talking about the same one. Was Visions geared more towards Asian and more pure anime fans? I would say pure anime fans for sure. I don't know if they were going for Asian specifically, but definitely anime fans across the board. I would say absolutely. That's what it's geared for. And like I said, because this isn't canon, they're able to tell stories that are Star Wars ish. I guess that's the best way to put it. That aren't typical, your typical Star Wars stories. And yes, it was an out of country production. It was done at ILM's studio in Singapore, which has been since shut down.
Really?
But yeah,
they shut that one down.
Yep. Okay. Yep, they shut that down about 2 years ago. So the first series of Visions was done over there. I don't know where the second one was done. I, like you, John, I just wasn't that invested in it, so I couldn't say for sure.
Okay,
but yeah. So if you're at all interested in anime, I think this would be a home run for the anime fan, because it's got some Star Wars elements to it. There's some Force use. There's some lightsaber use. There's some blasters. Good versus evil. Those type of stories, but it's not 100%. Darth Vader and stormtroopers versus Luke and the rebellion and all those type of things. So
yeah,
and so that's Star Wars Visions. And the last one, I'm not positive if this is canon or not, so I'm going to let John take the wheel on this one, because I haven't watched a single second of this show, and it's not because I have anything against it. I honestly keep forgetting.
That's fine.
But see, I haven't had any littles in my life, and now recently. I'm a grandpa. And he's 1 year old, and I'm really excited about watching the show with him.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, we talked about Resistance being good for like the 6-7 year old. Well, this is for the younger than that crowd, which it started in 2023. Honoro was 5.
Yeah.
No, wait. 4 or 5, somewhere around there. And then, so yeah, it's great for little kids. It is set in the High Republic era. Starlight Beacon shows up. It's in that sort of Yoda's obviously in the show because he's 800 years old at that point. But it's little kid adventures. Okay. Yeah. And they're dealing with pirates in a very kid-friendly way. It's sort of it's not quite Jake and the Neverland Pirates.
Okay.
But I put it on that level of like storytelling complexity.
Okay.
With a little more action.
All right.
These are kids with lightsabers. I mean, they're training sabers. They're not hacking off limbs or anything like that. But then there are kid pirates, and they just have to deal with stuff. It's kind of cool. They have to learn valuable life lessons. Yeah, okay, Nubs, the little blue furry guy. Actually, Tim, you remind me a lot of Nubs. He's fuzzy and he's always hungry.
And clearly adorable. So.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Everybody. But, I mean, somewhere in the house we have all of these characters as, like, stuffed, stuffy creatures. There are a couple Lego sets that I got on clearance that I totally bought for my daughter.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Learning experience. Granzer says this is more for the in the womb crowd, or no, this is a preschool,
Yeah, three
preschool
to
kindergarten
5,
production.
somewhere on there. Yeah,
Okay.
but it's a way to get kids into at least the concepts of Star Wars before you start scaring them with Order 66 in every other show.
Loss of life and limb that you see in Clone Wars and Bad Batch and Rebels. And,
Master Anakin, there's too many of them.
yeah. What are we going to do? You're going to die, kid. That's what's going to happen.
Yep.
Yeah, you turn into Eminem. Hello, kids. You like violence? So yeah. But yeah, so I haven't watched this yet. I keep saying that I'm going to, and then like I said, it was just that I didn't have any littles in my life. I now have a little in my life, and I'm very excited to watch this with my grandson. So because I told my daughter-in-law that we were going to have to undergo some Jedi training, and this looks like a very good way to start some of that.
Yep. Season 2 has let's see here. The next part of season 2 drops in March.
Okay.
Because they're releasing it in chunks. So I mean, you got some time to catch up before then. You got like a month.
Okay.
Just saying.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, it's good, clean family fun.
Granzer says John likes to go to Order 66 often. He often goes there. We see what you did there, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those fixed moments in time for Star Wars. Every show kind of connects back to it somehow.
It's like the Battle Yavin. It's just a fixed moment where something big happened, something big changed, and it's easy to navigate from that point to have a story to navigate.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is the last of the episodes or series rather to review. Before Order 66, it was a Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, Order 66 is now the in every reality Uncle Ben is dead for Spider-Man. Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. That's all, folks. That's all the Star Wars. We have reviewed animation, we have reviewed live action television series, we have reviewed the movies, and what we've found is that Star Wars is what you allow it to be. If you keep it in your back pocket and you say that only the original trilogy was good, then that's what you're going to have it be. Then only the original trilogy is going to be any good and any fun. But there's a lot of good things that Disney has done with Star Wars and Lucasfilms. There are some things that they shouldn't have done with Star Wars and Lucasfilms. But there's also some things that George Lucas shouldn't have done with Star Wars and Lucasfilms, if we're being honest. So, Clone Wars, Attack of the Clones, rather, Episode 2, Naboo Lakeside, I'm looking right at you.
It kind of makes sense, but
Master Anakin would be very grumpy if he saw me doing this for you. Anyway, yeah.
You're having a hard time with names tonight.
Yeah. Shush. Nobody likes you.
Kathleen likes me.
Because she has to legally. Granzer asked, is there a Star Wars storyline that you believe in animation should be done on? Yes, we were talking about it earlier, and I very much want to see Omega and Ahsoka from the point of the rebellion to the fall of the Empire. What was Ahsoka doing during all those years? Her, Captain Rex, and Omega. I'm hoping that there's an animation series that comes out that focuses strongly on those three. Or I would honestly love to see Acolyte be done as animation for a season 2 moving forward. And I think that would bring in a lot of the Acolyte haters to have a very well done animated series.
So apparently, Manny Jacinto, how do you say his name? Is making appearances at Star Wars Celebration in a couple months. And there are some hints and whispers that it might not be the Acolyte, but there may be a continuation of the story in some shape or form on screen.
I'm hoping there needs to be, because he was such a good character, and there was so much potential there. And we already covered all this with the Acolyte in the live action Star Wars, but there's so much there. And even if that was done, dive deeper into. The Acolyte absolutely needs to be. There's so much there that was left on the table, and I would love to see it as an animated series. I think it would be phenomenal as an animated series. So, because one of the things that's nice about animation over live action is that there's not actor limitations. They can get the things on screen to do whatever they want, however they want, because they don't have to worry about injuring an actor or anything along those lines. So
you could even get Mark Hamill to show up to play Luke and just like digitally correct his voice to the right pitch, because as you get older, you can't quite
your voice changes for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, they could have him do it with some minor correction, and we could get.
I like animation shorts on the Lando Calrissian books. Yeah. Honestly, what I would like to see from that time period. We talked about this with the movies, that there's a big push out there for make Solo 2 happen. I'm not convinced that I need a Solo 2, but what I do want to see is a version of Solo, but I would rather see it as a live action television series or an animated series. What happened with Kira and Maul at the end of the Solo movie, moving on with the crime syndicates and all those things up until the point of Maul's death. And I think that would be a whole lot of fun.
That would be great.
Plus, whatever I can do to hear Sam Witwer as Darth Maul more, I'm going to vote for.
Yeah.
Because Sam Witwer is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. But yeah, so those are the areas. And honestly, anything Lando Calrissian, I'm down for, because Lando's Lando. And yeah, I love Lando. He's a cool character.
Yeah. Oh, on a Colt 45. Because I'm old enough to remember Billy D. Williams doing beer commercials.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Oh, and now I got to go take some Advil. Okay. Thank you for that reminder.
Before the show.
Do you remember the book that covered each of the Star Wars ESP bounty hunters? Oh, yeah, I do remember.
Yeah, Tales of the Bounty Hunter.
That could be a lot of fun, or at least shorts. Yeah. They did Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Bounty Hunter.
Tales of Jabba's Palace. That was a fun one.
It would be fun to see. I would like to see something else with Bosk other than a couple of the things. He's been on screen a few times in animation too. But it'd be fun to see him more.
In one of those books, you find out that Greedo's dead body was used to make drinks at the cantina.
That's lovely.
Oh yeah.
I bought beer because of that Billy D. Williams commercial. I love it. I love it.
That's great.
Oh, I order you a double shot of Advil, Grandeur. All right. Very good. And on that note, guys, gals, and kids in between, it's time for us to say goodbye. Thank you to everyone who stopped in and had a chat with us, and everybody who put comments up on the screen. And this has been a lot of fun. So until next time, may the Force continue to be with you as you live long and prosper. Goodbye. Oh, let me fix that. There we go. Bye. Bye.
Copyright 2025 FSF PopCast. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF PopCast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpopcast.com.